I had been looking forward to my weekend getaway for months. I booked a charming, rustic Airbnb in a remote part of Maine, far away from the hustle and bustle of my city life. The listing showed a cozy cottage nestled in the woods, perfect for a solitary retreat. I packed my bags with anticipation, imagining the peaceful days and nights I would spend reading, hiking, and just unwinding. Upon arrival, the cottage looked just as it did in the pictures. The host, a friendly middle-aged man named George, handed me the keys and showed me around. The place was quaint, with antique furniture and a warm, inviting fireplace. George pointed out all the amenities and wished me a pleasant stay. As he left, he mentioned a curious detail that I found odd. Just make sure not to go into the basement. It's used for storage. The first night was uneventful. I enjoyed a quiet dinner, read by the fire, and went to bed early. However, I was awakened in the middle of the night by strange noises. It sounded like whispering, but it was faint and muffled. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to my overactive imagination and the unfamiliar sounds of the forest. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I explored the house more thoroughly, noting how certain parts of the floor creaked oddly and how the basement door seemed to beckon me. My curiosity got the better of me, and despite George's warning, I decided to take a quick peek downstairs. I found the key to the basement in a drawer near the kitchen and unlocked the door. The steps creaked under my weight as I descended into the darkness. The basement was cluttered with old furniture, dusty boxes, and cobwebs. But in the far corner, something caught my eye. A small wooden door barely visible behind a stack of old trunks. I moved the trunks aside and opened the door. To my surprise, it led to a narrow, hidden room. Inside, I found what looked like an old recording studio, complete with outdated equipment and reels of tape. The walls were lined with soundproofing material, and in the center of the room was a single chair facing a microphone. On the walls, there were pictures of various people, each with a date written below. The dates spanned several decades. As I examined the pictures, I noticed something chilling. The most recent photo was of me, taken that very day. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of it. Suddenly, I heard footsteps upstairs. Someone was in the house. Panicking, I quietly made my way back upstairs, locking the basement door behind me. I grabbed my phone and hid in the closet, calling the police. The whispering started again, this time louder, more insistent. I could hear someone moving around the house, searching for me. When the police arrived, they found George in the house, claiming he was just checking in on his guest. But when they searched the basement, they discovered the hidden room and the photos. George was arrested, and it was revealed that he had been stalking his guests for years, using the hidden room to record their every move. I was lucky to escape with my life. Before we get into the next story, if you come for the first time, please make sure to subscribe to a channel and press the bell icon for upcoming scary stories. We need your support. Please share the stories with your friends and family. Thanks. My partner Mark and I were looking for a romantic getaway. We found a beautiful Airbnb in the mountains of Colorado. A secluded cabin with stunning views and all the amenities we could ask for. The host, an elderly woman named Mrs. Whitaker, greeted us warmly and showed us around the cabin, emphasizing how the peaceful surroundings would provide the perfect escape from our busy lives. The first night was magical. We enjoyed a candlelit dinner on the deck, watched the stars, and felt closer than ever. We went to bed content, looking forward to the adventures the next few days would bring. In the middle of the night, I woke up to a strange noise. I nudged Mark, who groggily got out of bed to investigate. As he walked through the cabin, he heard the sound of footsteps on the deck outside. He peered through the thing. Convinced it was just an animal, he went back to bed. The next morning, we found muddy footprints leading from the deck to the front door. Puzzled, we cleaned them up and went about our day, exploring the nearby trails and enjoying the natural beauty of the area. That night, we made sure all the doors and windows were locked before going to bed. Around midnight, I woke up again. This time, I heard whispering coming from the living room. I shook Mark awake, and together we crept out of the bedroom to investigate. To our horror, we saw a figure standing in the living room, staring at the fireplace. The figure looked exactly like me. Frozen in fear, we watched as the doppelganger turned and smiled at us, its eyes dark and empty. It spoke in my voice, but the words were garbled and nonsensical. Mark grabbed a fireplace poker and approached the figure, but as he got closer, it vanished into thin air. Shaken, we decided to leave the cabin immediately. We packed our bags in a hurry and drove to the nearest town, where we checked into a hotel for the night. The next day, we contacted Mrs. Whitaker and told her what had happened. She seemed genuinely surprised and apologized profusely, offering us a refund. Back at home, we couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us. I began having nightmares about my doppelganger, and strange things started happening around our apartment. Objects would move on their own, lights would flicker, and we would hear whispers in the middle of the night. Desperate, we reached out to a local paranormal investigator who agreed to help. After a thorough investigation, the investigator discovered that the cabin was built on land that had a history of strange occurrences. There were numerous reports of doppelgangers and other supernatural phenomena dating back to the early settlers. The investigator performed a cleansing ritual in our apartment, and for a while, things seemed to return to normal. But every now and then, I would catch a glimpse of my doppelganger in the mirror, reminding me that some things can never be truly explained or escaped. As an avid traveler and history buff, I couldn't resist when I found an Airbnb listing for Maplewood House, a historic mansion in upstate New York. The house had been built in the 1800s and was said to be one of the most beautiful properties in the area. The host, Mr. Thompson, mentioned in the listing that the house had a rich history, but he didn't go into details. Excited, I booked a week-long stay, eager to explore the mansion and the surrounding town. When I arrived, Mr. Thompson gave me a tour of the house. The mansion was stunning, with its grand staircase, ornate woodwork, and antique furnishings. However, there was a lingering feeling of sadness in the air that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Mr. Thompson mentioned that the house had been in his family for generations, and that some guests had reported strange occurrences. Nothing too alarming, he assured me. Just a few odd noises and cold spots. It's an old house after all. The first few days were uneventful. I spent my time exploring the mansion, reading in the grand library, and taking long walks through the gardens. But on the third night, things began to change. I woke up to the sound of a piano playing softly somewhere in the house. Groggy and confused, I got out of bed and followed the music to the parlor where an old grand piano stood. The keys were moving on their own, playing a haunting melody. I froze, watching in disbelief. The music stopped, room went silent. I backed out of the parlor and hurried back to my room, convincing myself it was just a dream. But the next night, the same thing happened. This time I saw a figure standing by the piano. A woman in a Victorian dress, her face pale and sorrowful. Terrified, I decided to confront Mr. Thompson. I told him about the piano and the ghostly figure. He sighed and confessed that the mansion was indeed haunted. The ghost was believed to be his great-great-grandmother Elizabeth, who had died tragically in the house. She had been a talented pianist, and her spirit seemed to be trapped, playing the piano night after night. Determined to help, I did some research and found out that Elizabeth had lost her child in a tragic accident and had died of grief shortly after. I believed that Elizabeth's spirit was seeking closure. I suggested holding a memorial service in the parlor, playing one of Elizabeth's favorite pieces on the piano. Mr. Thompson agreed, and we held the service the following night. As I played the piano, the room grew cold, and I felt a presence beside me. I continued playing, tears streaming down my face, hoping to bring peace to Elizabeth's tormented spirit. When the last note faded, the air grew warmer, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The ghostly figure appeared one last time, smiling gratefully before fading away. The haunting stopped after that night, and Mr. Thompson thanked me for my help. I left Maplewood House with a heavy heart, knowing I had helped a lost soul find peace. The experience stayed with me, a reminder that the past can linger in unexpected ways, and that sometimes the living must help the dead